at least on this side of the Taiwan Strait. More recently, Dr. Lin has added yet another accomplishment, which may even top all of those of the rest of his career, which is that he's been a regular guest on CNN. So we're especially pleased today that he's agreed to spend time with us ordinary journalists who work at less glamorous jobs outside the limelight of international television. Dr. Lin will speak to us about the most difficult policy problem his government faces, which is leading Taiwan's young democracy, while at the same time dealing with an intractable and hostile regime on the other side of the Taiwan Strait. Please, let's give a warm welcome to the Vice President of the Republic of China, Dr. Lin Zhao.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Taipei Foreign Correspondent Club, Director David Lee, it is a pleasure to be with you today to share some thoughts on the process of democratization here in Taiwan and its importance for the development of cross-strait relations. Before I start, I would like to congratulate you on forming this very important organization, FCC. Its recent inception is one indication of the growing importance of Taiwan on the world stage. I'm sure also that a periodic get-together like this allows each of you to get to know your fellow media professionals better and boost professional morale. I'm delighted at the opportunity to get to know each of you better and facilitate a greater understanding of my country. I want to speak to you today about the importance and value of democratic development on Taiwan and the significance it presents for normalizing cross-strait relations. As the approaching election here in Taiwan reminds us, the political system in the Republic of China has evolved dramatically over the past decade or so. Candidates from at least several political parties will soon be vying for public office, as did President Lee and myself last year, and as did members of the current Legislative Yuan and National Assembly during the past few years. From the grassroots to the head of state, political leaders in the territory under the jurisdiction of the Republic of China are now beholden to the electorate on a regular basis. Sovereignty does indeed rest with the people here in Taiwan. The importance of this cannot be overstated. Democratic nations respect the human rights of their citizens because it is the citizenry that ultimately runs the country. Democratic states rarely go to war with other democratic states. True democracies provide pluralistic environments that allows citizens to develop their country to its full potential. Hence, the association of prosperity with democracy. They educate their people because an informed public is necessary to choose those who will govern. A highly educated electorate is also a highly skilled workforce that can compete in the global economy. A highly educated public will, by definition, have a wide range of views on many issues, hence the need for political pluralism. Those are all internationally recognized criteria for a full and healthy democracy, and ones that the Republic of China has fully met. In this respect, to reverse a phrase used by President Clinton of the United States in a recent press conference, I believe that the Republic of China is on the right side of history. As the collapse of the Soviet Union and the subsequent abandonment of communism by most nations attests, communism has proven politically, morally, and economically bankrupt. Half-hearted efforts to implement free market economic reform without being willing to address the fundamental need for comprehensive economic, political, and social change result in many nagging questions. This is something that the Chinese mainland leader, Mr. Jiang Zemin, discovered recently on his trip to the United States. It is bewildering that members of the international community, including the United States, are seeking ways to help integrate the Chinese mainland into the international order, while a full democracy like the Republic of China still encounters obstacles to its participation in the same order as a result of pressure from Peking. There is no more powerful way to encourage democratization and economic development than to affirm the achievements of countries like the Republic of China, who clearly and fully meet the requisite international criteria. While in the United States, Mr. Jiang tried to claim that the concept of human rights is culturally relative, but Taiwan is undeniable proof that democracy and respect for human rights can be fully compatible with Chinese culture and warmly embraced by Chinese people if they are only given the chance. In contrast to case after case, namely human rights, accession to World Trade Organization, protection of intellectual property rights, and so on and so forth, where Peking demands special consideration in how it should be judged by the international community. The Republic of China has simply gone and met the criteria. Actions speak louder than words. This fundamental contrast in how the two sides of the Taiwan Strait approach the need for change and reform has implications for the future development of cross-strait relations. Democratic development on Taiwan has provided a particular context for how the issue of Chinese reunification will have to be approached by both sides if it is to be successful and lasting. In essence, the ROC wishes to normalize relations with the mainland. This means an initial reduction and the eventual elimination of hostility. Those less familiar with the Taiwan Strait situation than you might simply conclude that a state with less territory than another would have to be flexible and accommodating when faced with a giant neighbor. However, this misses the point that democratic countries are inherently disposed to seek peaceful and constructive solutions because their leaders are accountable to their people. The ROC renounced the use of force to seek the reunification of China because we have come to realize that only reunification achieved through a voluntary and peaceful process can last. Coercion or attempt at military conquest can only sow the seeds of further hatred. Democratic governments usually work for peace and stability because they must ultimately heed the popular will. We are sure that the people of the mainland would choose democracy, freedom, and prosperity if allowed to vote in a fair election. Once the leaders in Peking are ready to recognize the need for democratic reform on the mainland, there is no question that democracy will sprout and grow. To be sure, democratic development there will take some time, perhaps considerable lengths of time. We feel, however, that the people of Taiwan should not be denied representation by their elected government in international bodies and activities during such an extended period of change on the mainland. Peking tries to portray this stance as some sort of secret agenda in Taipei to avoid reunification. But it is in fact just the opposite. We are willing to give our counterparts across the strait the time to narrow the economic, political, and social differences that stand in the way of popular support for immediate reunification with the mainland. That is the very nature of a democracy. In the meantime, there are other avenues to normalizing cross-strait relations that can be taken at the present time. The most immediate one is continued exchanges between Taiwan and the mainland. They represent a way to play to each other's strengths while furthering mutual understanding and appreciation. They represent a barometer of how healthy or not the state of cross-strait relations is at any given time. And certainly, another crucial aspect of normalizing bilateral relations with the mainland is achieving equality between Taipei and Peking. The mainland leaders have refused to meet this criterion, claiming that Taiwan is too small. This is an absurd excuse, given that territorial size is hardly the sole determining factor of status in most government-to-government relationship. If the Republic of China is measured in terms of its economic might, our two governments represent far more equal entities than our differences in territorial size would indicate. Going one step further, if one appraises each side of the strait in terms of how much political progress has been made. It is Taiwan that dwarfs the mainland. The prosperity and freedom we enjoy today here in Taiwan is a result of the democracy, free market system, and social pluralism that the ROC government has worked to achieve over the past decades. This sense of equality that Taipei and Peking must share applies beyond cross-strait relations. The two sides are truly equal only when they are equal participants in the international community. Until Peking accords Taipei the respect it is due on the world stage, it will be difficult for the ROC government to convince its electorate that it can negotiate the issue of reunifying China with its counterparts on the mainland in a way that can genuinely assure the welfare and security of the people on Taiwan. There is another need for Taipei and Peking to demonstrate equal respect for each other internationally. I'm sure that those of you who covered the election last year in Taiwan for President and Vice President of the Republic of China recall how absurd it was for voters to be heading to the ballot box while Peking played war games off our coast. No other electorate has had to face the larger context of cross-strait relations when making internal political choices at the ballot box. Despite Peking's attempt at military intimidation and its claims that leaders here held a secret agenda for Taiwan independence, voters on Taiwan acted in accord with what poll after poll has found to be the popular will, namely maintaining the status quo in relations with the mainland while awaiting future developments. However, elections should take place in an atmosphere of spirited public debate, not in spite of the external military threats. If the international community would make efforts to further integrate both Taipei and Peking into the international order, both sides of the Taiwan Strait could pursue democratic development and economic growth in a healthy and stable climate. This is ultimately the key to a sound and peaceful reunification of the Chinese nation that can add to the stability of the new world order. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I think the value of democratic development is worth remembering when considering the future of cross-strait relations and the destiny of the Chinese people. As the recent economic instability in some Southeast Asian nations underscores, the education of the citizenry of a nation is key to its future. A highly trained workforce in this modern age is also a group of well-educated citizens. And well-educated citizens are potentially well-informed voters. While experts may disagree on how serious the short-term economic problems of Asia may be, no one seriously doubts the long-term potential of this region and the key role that the Chinese people will play and can play in its growth. The leaders in Beijing, in Peking, are going to find that as the nations of the Asia-Pacific region continue to compete for economic growth and development, educating their workforce will be a crucial factor in achieving the greatest competitiveness. As the ROC government here in Taiwan long ago realized, educated citizens can develop their full potential and make enormous contributions to national prosperity. At the same time, they demand a great deal of their government as they gain a stake in their country's future. Respect for human rights is nothing more than a natural affirmation of the value each person places on making a difference in their society and country. The world has already been impressed by the Taiwan economic miracle and the recent economic growth on the mainland. Those hint at the talents and energies of the Chinese people. In our experience here in Taiwan, if the Chinese people are to play a leading role in the 21st century, democratic development will be essential to unleashing their full potential. So when you seek to analyze the policies and actions of the Republic of China, please do not forget this context of democracy, for it says the most about who we are and what we believe. Ladies and gentlemen, actions really do speak louder than words. Thank you very much.
Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for that very fine speech. As I understand it, Vice President Lin has agreed to take a few questions from our guests today, and perhaps we can begin that right now if he's available. A few questions. Okay, good. Who wants to start? Leslie John from the Asian Wall Street Journal.
Mr. Vice President, you mentioned several times the economic crisis in many of the countries in Asia. Can you tell me what role you see Taiwan perhaps playing in this crisis? Is this a good opportunity to build Taiwan's international stature in terms of perhaps providing aid to some of the countries in Asia?
Well, thank you for the question. I mentioned the financial crisis taking place in Southeast Asian countries. It's basically a structural imbalance caused by too rapid economic growth that brings higher prices, higher interest rates, higher foreign debt, and at the same time a slowdown of a basic industrial infrastructure. And certainly an overvalued currency pegged to US dollars is also one cause. But here in the Republic of China, the situation is different. Basically, we have a sound and healthy economy. With economic growth projected at 6.6% this year. You have a situation that with 86 billion US dollars foreign reserve as against 100 million international debt. That's a very ideal situation. And the currency has been depreciated since July, somewhere around now 11% plus or minus. But this compared to what happened in Southeast Asian countries There's no comparison. So as long as we attach great attention to the problems of economic infrastructure, particularly adequate money supply, and maintain a market liquidity, I think we will come out and maybe even stronger than ever before. So this is what I believe, and certainly there's some other problems like the real estate or the value of the yuan and won in Korea and so on. But basically, I'm optimistic.
Sorry, precisely because Taiwan's economic fundamentals are so much better, do you think Taiwan has a role helping others who are not doing as well in terms of providing aid or assistance?
I think my government is willing. I'm not speaking for the banker, for the governor of the central bank, but I think we should be willing to render our assistance to other countries. But more ideally, it should be conducted through the channels of the international organizations like IMF or World Bank. Not only, it's not an excuse for us to get into this international organization, but it's a way of protecting us too, ourselves too.
Next, I'd like to call on Josephine Wu from Radio Free Asia.
Mr. Vice President, I have a question to ask you, but more than that, I ask for my audience, the major audience in mainland China of IFA. The question is, so I apologize for the foreign guests here. I gotta speak in Chinese, so please answer in Chinese. 我们知道，在江泽民访问美国的时候，我们的驻美代表陈玉居在美国接受很多国外的媒体采访，关于这个看法的时候，他曾经讲到一个两岸关系这个理念非常的有意思。他说，等到这个中国大陆逐渐的民主化，那中国的领导人也渐渐的这个老化之后，也许在未来的20年左右，他预估这个数字，可能两岸的统一是可以预期的。所以我的这个问题是说，在所谓一个中国政策之下，那么在未来台湾是不是要像陈代表所说的顺其自然的造成最后的两岸统一，还是说在未来台湾有一个很可以落实两岸关系的推展的政策？那第二个问题是说，最近 Richard Bush 拜访台湾，也是在加强台湾跟美国的关系，做了一个很具体的一个 action。那可不可以谈谈您跟他见面得到一个什么样的 message， 好不好？
关于这个两岸的这个统一的问题，我刚才也讲到，我事实上我也讲到，我今天这个讲话，主要也是希望这个大陆能够变成一个自由的、一个民主的、一个能够尊重人权的一个地方。那么这样子的话，国家的这个统一就可以实现，可以实现。那么假如是在这个之前呢，我们只有尽我们的力量，透过各种的，我刚才也谈到，透过我们这个各种的交流，甚至于包括这个文化的、经济的各种层面的这个交流，来促进这种转变。也许这个转变是他们不愿意听的话，不过就是这个过程能够使得这个国家呢真正变成一个自由民主国家，那么这样子就没有任何的这个所谓阻碍，这是我基本的一个看法。我们在去年，李总统到美国去访问之后中共就单方面的把这个会谈的门关起来了。在过去这一段时间呢，我们一再的强调应该这个重新再开始。不过事实上到今天呢，还没有一个很明确的一个 回应。我们觉得问题都可以来谈，都可以来谈。那么这个包括您刚才所谈的这些问题都可以。不过这个什么时候我个人乃至于我们政府单方面也没有办法来预测。
Yes, yes, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but could you please stand up and identify yourself?
Lately, that high-level talks will resume sometime in early next year, probably this spring, after Clinton visits Beijing. And I'm just wondering, what is Taipei? Is the government here working towards that? And if they do, if there is talks, will it focus on practical or political issues?
Well, I think my personal opinion is that when you start talking to each other again, you will not be satisfied with only dealing with the technical issues only. Perhaps some issues with a broader scope will also be involved. But as I pointed out a moment ago, that we don't know what will be the time that both sides resume their discussions and negotiations. It's still up to them to make it clear, a favorable response to what we have been called over and over again in the past.
Yes, okay. Annie Wong from AP.
I have a question about the November 29 elections. Mr. Vice President, you can choose to answer either in English or Chinese. Sorry. 我们注意到最近因为面对选战，民进党它改变它的策略，它一方面淡化台独的色彩，同时另外一方面还有人主张跟中共三通。那您会不会担心到，如果是县市长的选战，民进党得票过半以后，对于两岸的关系或者台湾的未来会有一些什么样的影响？
我不做这样子的一个假设，我想我们绝对多数的民众都很了解他们需要什么，他们需要的是一个自由的、安定的。繁荣的一个社会一个环境。虽然这个地方的选举，因为有地方的这个不同，地方这个所关心的问题，也有若干的差异，但是基本上在大的方向，在大的走向，我想我们绝对多数的民众都很了解，所以这也就是。您刚才刚开始的时候，那个开始那几句引言的话非常重要，我想我也同意这种讲法，所以我们当然对任何的这个选举，我们都是不能掉以轻心，这是民主的一个正常的一个态度，但是我们也必须要有信心。常常用的话是叫做审慎的乐观。I want to use that word again.
Anyone else in the back of the room there? Yes, Mr. Perez from the Spanish News Agency.
I would like to ask you about after the Clinton and Chiang summit. Is there going to be any change in the orientation of the policy, the foreign policy of Taiwan, especially regarding with the Latin American and other African countries? There will be a diminishing of the efforts of Taiwan to keep formal diplomatic relations, or it's going to be the same thing?
Well, again, I'm not speaking for my foreign minister, but I can express my own view on this. And I think in order to survive and to develop, we don't have other choice but to go out. And by going out, I mean literally three things. One, of course, is to establish and expand our formal diplomatic relations with foreign countries. Formal diplomatic relations. Then we should also expand our presence in international organizations and activities. And thirdly, we should also increase our contact with all other countries, what we call pragmatic diplomacy, meaning that we cannot, using the traditional type of diplomacy to in the contact of our foreign relations with many countries, but we could use informal, pragmatic relations to strengthen our ties with many countries in the world. For example, Spain is an example. So we will have no change. We will have no change in this respect.
Yes. Let me just go back to the back of the room. This gentleman right here, I don't know your name, but please identify yourself.
Andy Pasek from the American Chamber of Commerce in Taipei. Mr. Vice President, next time the Taipei Foreign Correspondents Club has the honor to invite you to speak to us, what are the chances of you doing so as the next president of the Republic of China and Taiwan?
I'm not looking that far into the future. I mentioned this many times in the past. That it all depends on the situations in the future. So why don't we say that we will cross the bridge when we come to it?
Anyone else? Jeffrey Parker from Reuters.
Mr. Vice President, politics is about policy, but it's also about people, personalities. You've made a great pitch about Taiwan's policies over the last decade, and quite admirably so. But we are talking about people as well. 2 years ago, after the election, not even 2 years ago, President Lee here was hailed as Mr. Democracy. Got a lot of public, good public press around the world for the achievements of Taiwan. Now 2 years later, Jiang Zemin goes to America, and the words trickling off his tongue, among the words trickling off his tongue, is democracy. A lot seems to have changed in the public relations world, in the personality world, since the elections here. And it seems that the mainland is getting a lot of credit for their policies. Put it this way, is President Lee getting outfoxed by President Jiang?
Well, I think we're talking two different kinds of democracies. Yeah. If I may go very frank with you, I call it one genuine and one pseudo. Yeah. You cannot characterize the mainland as a democracy in every sense of the word. Yeah. And this is what I'm arguing today. Yeah. But President Lee stands for democracy, and the democratization of ROC in the past 10 years, I think is a proof to that. Yeah. We hope that the visit to the United States by Mr. Jiang is not only an effort to boost image. Something more substantial can follow, ensue. That would be better. But up to now, I don't see there's a basic change or similarities between two kinds of people's democracy is quite different.
Anyone else? Yes, please. Please identify yourself.
basically out of curiosity, just you've gone to Europe and Iceland and many different places, and I'm just wondering for your next trip, people are saying that you may go out by the end of the year again. I'm not asking that, but I'm just wondering if you ever go out again, where would be your next destination?
I really want, I hope to tell you, but only in private. I have many trips being planned. Yeah. I was just telling my neighbor here, that some formal and some informal, some official and some not official. Yeah. But it's coming. Well, I may combine some together. Well, let's call it pragmatic.
Any other questions? No more questions?
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Vice President.